Welcome home to USA Global TV and Radio. Ours is a place where dreams take flight, voices are heard, and stories are shared. This is where cultures meet, connections are formed, and ideas are transformed into action. This is your destination for authentic storytelling, diverse perspectives, and meaningful conversations. We're where global stories unite and bridges are built beyond all borders. Discover our world of education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. Together, we're building bridges worldwide. Subscribe to our USA Global TV channel and download our USA Global TV app. Be our guest or join our team. Visit usaglobaltv.com. With heartfelt thanks to our executive producer, Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck, music scored by Yifei Tang from Cloud Road Music, creative direction by Paul Garcia, and I'm Al Cini, and I'm very proud to be part of the USA Global TV and Radio family. So join us here at USA Global TV and Radio. Make us your home for global connection. All rights reserved. This video and its contents are the exclusive property of USA Global TV and Radio. Unauthorized use, duplication, or redistribution in any form is strictly prohibited. Thank you for being a part of our global community. Let's inspire together.
Hello and welcome wherever you are in the world. We are so happy to have you here at USA Global TV and Radio. Our show today is Ahead for Business, and I'm Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck. I want to thank our worldwide audience. Ahead for Business, one of our earlier episodes, was the #1 most watched video on our YouTube channels for the month of March. So thank you very much. As you know, if you've been here before, I am not alone in this space for Ahead for Business. I am joined by Al Cini, who is my dear friend, mentor, colleague, and all around really good guy. He's also the co-founder of Profit for Teams. Let's welcome him to our program. Hello, how are you?
What's up?
You didn't know that about the most watched video, did you, for March?
I think I saw that flash by at some point, and it's gratifying. It really is. I think for me anyway, it's always about the content and what story are you telling and what point are you making and what lessons can people learn from it. And I'm happy to report that I think today we've got a fun one, but there's a little bit more nuance to it, and we'll try to highlight that too.
Well, fantastic. I'm always excited for whatever we're going to explore together. We've been working together in TV for many years now. But Al, we also have another show called The Business Show. Can you please share with our audience what is the main difference or what value will they get from The Business Show versus the value they get from Ahead for Business?
Yeah, we alternate those shows on Thursdays. So every Thursday there's a program. It's either The Business Show or it's Ahead for Business. On The Business Show, we talk to business leaders and we ask them about the challenges they face and the solutions they brought to address those challenges. And the opportunity there is to learn from people who run businesses, maybe a little bit more the operational or sales and marketing side of business and how to be more successful at that. But then on alternate Thursdays, we do Ahead for Business. And Ahead for Business is, I have to say, my idea. And it has to do with the fact that often something happens and the first thing you think is, what were they thinking? What were they thinking? Today is kind of an example of that. It's the psychology of business choices, decisions that people make that sometimes, if they had a chance to rewind the tape on their lives, they might record over that and start over again. So today's an example, but there are plenty. And so it should be fun. And that really is the difference.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And thank you to everybody who's watching. Please go over to our YouTube channels, USA Global TV and Radio and Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck, and subscribe. So Al, in our earlier episode, you did a phenomenal job talking about a certain burger and a certain CEO who was seen trying to eat the burger gingerly, and it was a great episode. I actually saw subsequent to that the same CEO has been interviewed about all the backlash that he got, and basically said it was the way that he was brought up and told how to eat a burger. So it was kind of like, well, what were you thinking then, and now why are you still perpetuating this story?
Why are you on it? See, there are some examples of shooting yourself in the foot, like that one. that actually help you sell. And I think his mistake really wasn't all that much of a mistake. I think he drew an awful lot of attention to himself and without insulting the food. And by doing that, he brought more eyeballs to see the food while they were looking at him, if you know what I mean. So I don't think it was, I think it was deliberate. I personally think that it's a campaign social, especially now these days with social media, we're a little bit more lean in and a little bit more interactive. And a lot of people picked up what he did, like us, and repeated it. So every time that happens, you get more audience. We're thinking, maybe I'll try that Archburger, which is a monster, by the way. And I haven't had one since. My cardiologist will be happy to hear that. But
you look like you enjoyed it at the time, though.
It's a good, God help me, it's a good sandwich. I mean, it's one of those guilty pleasures. Maybe I'd have to quietly sneak into a corner and unwrap it and eat it. I don't know, so that nobody knows I did. Tell everybody else I had a salad.
Well, Al, you have so much experience in network television. And so my question for you before we actually get into our topic for today is really in alignment with what you were just talking about. How much of what we see when we say to ourselves, what were they thinking, was actually planned so that there's really no bad publicity, right? Any publicity that you mention something, it gets in front of more people than it would have otherwise. What are your thoughts?
Well, I'm thinking just based on my experience that just about everything is planned. There are so many focus groups involved in planning the content that appears on especially television, because television's expensive to produce. I mean, with social media, you can kind of experiment with something, but the risk you run is that your experiment with television, it's kind of ephemeral unless an audience records it, it's not coming back. But on social media, everything is forever, and it just keeps coming back. So that's where you really need to be careful with what you put out there. And I think more and more, especially with social media campaigns, it's shoot from the hip. It's kind of like the Wild West. You never know what you're going to get. Half the time when you pull the trigger, the bullet goes through your foot. And so if you don't want that experience, then you really need to think it through. And today we're going to be highlighting an oldie but goodie. It's an example. Some people may have forgotten this story, but we'll bring it back. And we'll talk about the whole context of it, because there is a reason why this decision was made, and it was carefully planned and calculated to solve a problem, but it ended up creating a bigger problem than it solved from a marketing point of view. It'll be fun. I think the audience will like this.
I'm looking forward to it. So there used to be, and I don't know if it's changed, but there were certain limitations when it came to promoting alcoholic beverages. And obviously, we're going to be talking about an alcoholic beverage today, but we see a lot of advertisements. Are you familiar with maybe how this has evolved over time, where it went from you weren't allowed to advertise at all to now I guess it's within certain confines, but I don't know.
Well, alcohol, cigarettes, that kind of stuff. There have always been regulations on how you can promote products like that. The cigarette regulations have become more stringent. The alcohol regulations have become very relaxed. So I do remember that there used to be rules in network television, content advertising, product placement. There used to be rules in network television that you can show somebody holding an alcoholic drink, but you couldn't show them drinking the alcoholic drink on the show. And if you ran the program with somebody drinking alcohol and you were broadcast television where the FCC gets involved, they could theoretically pull your license for that. So you can get in trouble and lose your license for running programs over the public airwaves. With cable television, that all kind of loosened up, because cable television isn't considered a broadcast privilege. It's considered a consumer product. And so you can get away with a whole lot more on cable television than you used to be able to, and probably still can't. They probably still can't get away with too much on broadcast TV. So those rules have changed quite a bit.
And I guess when it comes to streaming, it's almost like anything goes.
Now it's, I mean, really, we could, I mean, there are proprietary. The world tends to regulate itself when it comes to real outrageous content. I mean, and you, for example, what we're about to see caused a great deal of outrage that was unintended and unanticipated. And, and to a large extent, it's the world that's going to regulate your behavior. You put something out there. I'm a free speech nut, and I believe in free speech. And I believe that people ought to be able to express themselves and not have to worry about governmental backlash when they express themselves. But that doesn't mean that if I put something out there, I'm not going to offend an audience that I'm trying to sell something to. I mean, that you've got a kind of a mixed. We'll talk about that too later after we've seen some of the clips and we've had a chance to understand the context behind this particular case. Everybody has a religious preference. Everybody has a political point of view. But there ought to be inside your head a boundary between what you personally believe and what you're trying to sell to a larger audience who may not share your beliefs. And that's where, that ready, fire, aim thing kind of comes in that you need to be careful of. When we talk about the brand suicide, which is what we're exploring today, the way you prevent it is by just trying to understand and empathize with the people that are viewing or consuming the content you're creating, to make sure that you're not actually alienating the people that represent your market. And as in about a second, I think we'll be off to the races on that.
Yes. And before we show that, the clip that's teed up, I just want to mention what I've learned and what I really believe as a business owner is not everyone is our client. Not everyone is our audience. There could be people watching today that may love what we're talking about, and there are people who might not. So when you are building a brand or you have an established brand, like what we're going to talk about in a few minutes, how do you market knowing that you may offend some people?
It's actually a question I could turn around to you. You know what kind of an audience you're trying to draw and build. You know what kind of an audience you built over the years. That you've been doing this for a long time, and you work very hard at presenting a brand that you feel represents your values correctly. And when you invite people into that community, when you put people on the air, you kind of prep them. You want them to know that there are standards that you've established, and you'd like them to try to inspire them to reach those standards with backdrops and clothing. And in other words, don't do the show if you're in the front seat of your car. Don't do the show if you're rearranging your closet and just sort of turn around and look in the camera. Those are things that you worry about. A lot of people who stream podcasts could care less. They just throw people onto the air no matter what environment they're in. But you really work at that. So, and your audience has come to know that about you. And if you were ever to change that up without preparing them, you could lose a lot of your audience, a whole lot of your audience, but just because they know you no longer meet their expectations. And that, that expectation, the psychology of disappointing people is very, very powerful. I mean, people always talk about fear as a motivator. And yeah, sure, we're afraid of things. We're afraid of government. We're afraid of authority. Sure, I mean, there's some things that scare us. But the real motivator, especially when you're raising children, is what motivates kids more than fear is disappointment. If they feel as though they've let somebody down, that's actually more profoundly affecting the way they behave than if they're worried about getting a spanking or yelled at. And I think that disappointment and expectations, meeting those expectations and doing it consistently every day, you deserve a lot of credit for that. You really work very hard at that. You won't let me do this without a green screen. You won't let me do this without that backdrop. I mean, that's you inspire me to dress up a little bit when I do this rather than, dress casually the way I usually might. And all that means you're on USA Global TV and radio, and that's what people come to expect. That's brand. That's how you defend it.
Yeah, that was a good explanation. I appreciate that. And of course, there are standards and there are boundaries, and there are always people who are pushing them, right? And so,
sure.
What's interesting is in the clips that we're going to be watching, it's almost like a question of where were those boundaries? Where were those standards? They were shifted and moved. And so, without further delay, why don't you tee up what it is we're going to be looking at?
We're going to be talking about the Budweiser Bud Light kind of disaster. There's no other way to express it. That happened in 2023. It was around around this time of year in 2023. So about 3 years ago, a decision was made to represent a very established product in a new light. Now, before we get into that kind of misjudgment, which is pretty much what everybody believes it was, although the person who made the misjudgment has a different slant on that, we'll explore that too. Before we get into that, though, let's set the stage by showing an example of the kind of media that Anheuser-Busch uses to connect its product to its audience. That's the first clip on this reel.
Absolutely. And just as a disclaimer, we are here to provide education and we're not supporting or promoting any brand. So that being said, let's take a look.
Okay.
Hello? Yo, what's up? Nothing, B. Just watching the game, having a bud. So, but you? Nothing. Watching the game, having a bud. True. What's that? Yo, who's that? Yo, pick up the phone. Hello? What's that? Yo, where's Dookie? Yo, Dookie. Yo. What's that? Hold on. Hello? So what's up, B? Watching the game, having a bud. True.
Well, Dr. Kerbeck.
Yes.
What does that tell you? Hang on, we're not going to play the next clip. Well,
no, I'm trying to put on pause.
So we'll pause that. But let's go ahead for the two shot, you and me, and let's talk about that a little bit based on what you just saw in that commercial. And by the way, that was the golden age of gender identity, the 20th century, at the very end of the 20th century, in the mid to late 90s. And that was when things were simpler. The pronouns were really simple. The whole idea of identifying was pretty simple. There was no complication added to it. And you get a pretty clear picture of who they believe drinks their product.
Yeah.
Is it men or women, by the way?
It appears to be men. When I first saw that, I actually didn't even know that the focus was on the beer. I didn't know what it actually was. It was kind of like men sticking their tongues out and going, "What's up?"
Exactly.
I didn't know what they were selling.
It's bros. And it was anyway, historically. That is who they sell. Now, that's not Bud Light in particular. That's a Budweiser ad, a general branding ad. And it's about guys having a good time. And I have an uncle. I'll make the story brief. I have an uncle who used to import wine from Italy. Great guy, really wonderful guy. And for a while there, he had a connection with the Philadelphia Phillies, a baseball team. And as part of that connection, he was offering wine for sale as an alternative beverage at baseball games. Now, when you come down to what were they thinking, you get back to that. I don't think he sold very much wine at baseball games. What they drink at baseball games is beer. That's pretty much it. There is a really strong association between people who attend sporting events and their, especially baseball and football. Certainly women go, and I don't want to make it sound like it's not inclusive of them. But it's guys, and the guys are the market, and they're the ones that buy the beer at the stadium, and they go to the stadium to spend $50 for a beer. I don't know if it's that expensive, but you know what I mean. And that's part of the culture. That was always part of the culture. So that finishes that clip. Does it seem like a pretty clear association in your mind, Dr. Jacalyn? Am I making this up?
No. I think what came up for me was I wasn't really sure what guys do when they get together for a guy's outing. And I thought, I guess that's it. They're just going,
they often make noises, grunt at each other. It's very tribal. I've been to enough of them. I'm maybe not your typical bro, but I can be one, and they're fun. I mean, they are, okay, we're going to have a beer. We're going to sit around. You flip into a different mode in your brain when you're drinking a beer with a bunch of guys. And that is essentially the Budweiser market, Anheuser-Busch's market for beer drinkers. And well, women drink beer too. And there are brands, in fact, that kind of cater to that, different brands of beer. But it's kind of a guy's world. And that I think that clip pretty much clearly represents that. But let's go to the next clip, because at some point they kind of brought the whole idea of gender in to the whole picture. I mean, that whole idea of gender, but they did it in a way that may have hurt them. So let's take a look at the next clip and then we'll talk.
Okay.
These guys are good. Who are you calling guys? Yeah.
Looks like you're in the finals. Ma'am, for the great taste that won't fill you up and never lets you down, make it a Bud Light.
You're the defending ladies pool champion?
Yes, I am.
Okay, Dr. Kerbeck. So you see what they did there. Now, remember, this is the 90s, where there's a kind of a clear distinction gender-wise in the population, and people have kind of a clear idea what one sex is versus the other. They actually added men to women's sports. In this case, the sport was pool, but they showed that men have a clear advantage. But men can put on a wig, keep their beards and mustaches, take advantage of ladies' night to get the discounts, the bar discounts, and also to play pool and win, because generally back in the day, it was considered that men play pool more effectively than women do. And so they kind of compete unfairly on that stage. You follow what I'm saying here? Now,
I follow what you're saying. So here's my question. When we think about what were they thinking at the time in the 90s, when you're looking at your audience that you're marketing to, was there a large percentage of men who want to get dressed up as women to go and shoot pool so they can get discount on beer?
I think that was meant to be humorous, obviously, and it was meant to reinforce the association between the product brand, and men, kind of reinforce that in kind of a caricature sort of way. But they were really digging a little hole for themselves. And this is interesting. If you look at the sales figures for Bud Light, well, first of all, Bud Light was established at that time as the number one beer brand in the world. I mean, and, when you're the number one beer brand, all the package stores make shelf space available for you. The bars tend to feature ads to draw people in to buy that product. So everything at the store level is pitched at people who have a brand preference for Bud Light. You want to make sure that you're in on that, if you follow me. But when you challenge that, when you tinker with that, you're not just tinkering with the raw sales of the beer product, you're also tinkering with all the support structure underneath the sales of that beer product. And we're about to see that. What was going on though at the time was that while Bud Light through the 90s and into the 21st century maintained its position as the number one beer brand, it was slipping. It was falling back. Other beer brands like Coors Light and Modelo were making gains. And Anheuser-Busch was worried about that. They were making some noise internally about it. And their marketing team was trying to think of ways to move to a different market, to move in a different direction, especially considering how things were changing culturally in the 21st century. So in the next clip, we'll see the marketing person who made the decision. Now, remember, this clip is kind of out of sequence. This is an interview with the marketing VP after everything hit the fan. So this is her explaining her thinking after the fact, but it makes sense to play it here because it's pretty much what was going through her mind at that time, knowing that they were losing ground with their number one light beer product, Bud Light, and she wanted to try to rescue it. So whenever you're ready, unless you want to add something to that, go ahead and play that clip.
I haven't watched this clip. I'm interested to hear what she has to say. Let's take a look.
Okay.
I had a really clear job to do when I took over Bud Light. And it was, this brand is in decline. It's been in decline for a really long time. Kind of a brand of fratty, kind of out of touch humor. And it was really important that we had another approach.
Okay, another approach. You heard what she said. She really was sensitive to the fact that Bud Light was slipping and that she wanted to reinvigorate the brand. In the 21st century, a couple of things were changing with respect to gender identity in the community, in the culture at large. And there were changes in the way media is consumed, big changes in the way media is consumed, where people all of a sudden were leaning in more and pulling their media rather than waiting for it to be presented to them. So she started a campaign. Now, later in interviews, she claimed it wasn't a campaign. It was just a one-off. But in fact, it was a campaign to try to broaden the market for Bud Light to recapture its number one position. And the masthead, the bow of the ship, is this next clip.
All right, let's bring it on.
Hi. Impressive carrying skills, right? I got some Bud Lights for us. So, I kept hearing about this thing called March Madness, and I thought we were all just having a hectic month, but it turns out it has something to do with sports. And I'm not sure exactly which sport, but either way, it's a cause to celebrate. This month, I celebrated my day 365 of womanhood, and Bud Light sent me possibly the best gift ever, a can with my face on it. Check out my Instagram story to see how you can enjoy March Madness with Bud Light and maybe win some money too. Love ya! Cheers! Go team! Whatever team you love, I love too. Okay. Love ya. Okay, break a leg.
Come on back, Dr. Jacalyn.
I've never seen it before, actually.
Well, a lot of people did.
It's just my first opinion, just watching it. It's supposed to be a commercial about beer, and beer is usually at certain events. And so people who are watching sports are drinking beer. Like, there's a lot of analogies that you could make or connections that you could make. And in this ad, she's basically saying she doesn't have any of the connections. So it's kind of like it's to a completely different audience. So I would think to myself, what were they thinking? Because who is the market that they're targeting here? Everyone else? Or it's kind of like it makes no sense.
Well, and a little later on, maybe we'll talk about ways that an organization can prevent something like this happening. And that really is by just airing the idea before you act on it, and more than anything. This is clearly something they move forward with, absent the kind of research you need to do in order to do this effectively. And in Alyssa's defense, Heinerscheid's defense, in her defense, she was trying to rescue a brand that she felt was struggling, and that was her point. Now, to do that, she relied on social media, which is very random. You can't really, it's not like you can buy ad time at a certain time of day or a certain time of the week or within a certain program in order to get your message out. You get your message out, and it ends up out there however it ends up out there. And she did it by co-opting Dylan Mulvaney, who is transgender, attractive woman, but used to be a guy, and made up a can, an actual physical can that had Dylan Mulvaney's picture on it, celebrating her 365th one-year day of being a woman. Now, none of that has anything to say about Dylan Mulvaney and any of her life choices, and that's got nothing to do with anything. But for the What's Up audience, for the people that have been watching your ad and buying your product over the years, it's not just about pulling new people into the tent to have them buy your beer. It's about making sure nobody jumps out of the tent. And the people who were in the tent ran out screaming on fire. And they ended up getting I believe it's a little hard to track this on a product basis. 40% of the product sales went away within a month, all based on that ad. And I didn't make clips of this, but there are so many clips online of guys with shotguns doing target practice on Bud Light cans and bottles. None of hers, by the way, because they really did only a few cans for just her. But then she went online and she represented Bud Light, and on her own social media channel, she had quite a following. People picked that up and they jumped all over it because you know how people are, especially in the 21st century. So
Absolutely.
that's kind of the backdrop of it. What do you think of all that?
Well, I think that it doesn't have to be that you're making a political statement, but when we are consumers of certain products, we typically are buying into what that brand represents. And so when that brand goes in a different direction, we start to look at ourselves and go, oh, I don't know if I'm aligned with that. And again, I'm not talking about politics. And that's a whole other conversation. But I don't think that in this case, they actually considered what could be the outcome of basically alienating a lot of their what's up consumer base.
Yeah. I mean, it got to a point where people said that they didn't even want to be at the bar with other people who were drinking Bud Light because they felt like it was ew. And now I'm part of a whole new community that I never really wanted to be part of. I feel like I'm being dragged into a friendship with people that I wouldn't normally gravitate toward for whatever reason. You know what I mean? And it turned out to be a big mistake. I just have one more clip where I want to talk about or show an example of how they tried to backfill this, because now it's a headline. Now it's out of control. It's no longer just something that we say, well, if we had to do it over again, we do it differently. It's now a news story. And unlike the big arch news story where it's kind of cute, but it doesn't hurt the brand, it actually helps you sell hamburgers. This went a different way. So if you want to play that out, we won't play the whole thing, but we'll play part of it. You can see what I mean.
Okay.
Bud Light is trying to regain its spot as America's top-selling beer after sales dropped 23% last month compared to the same period last year. Analysts blame the plunge on a Bud Light ad posted on social media by a transgender TikTok star.
This month, I celebrated my day 365 of womanhood, and Bud Light sent me possibly the best gift ever, a can with my face on it. Check out my Instagram story to see how you can enjoy March Madness with Bud Light and maybe win some money, too.
So many conservatives boycotted Bud Light after the ad went public, and when the parent company tried to distance itself from it, it caused backlash with the LGBTQ plus community.
So now you see what we're talking about. Not only did they fail to pull kind of a new audience, a new market in, but they alienated a large portion of their prior audience. And that number, by the way, that sales figure drop was closer to 40% by the time, within a couple of months news stories like that, which are intended to try to apologize to everybody, actually made the problem worse. It became a story about conservatives and liberals, which, as you know, is a very politically charged. A lot of the reason why people just decided they didn't want to drink Bud Light anymore is because they just didn't want it. They didn't see it. It was no longer a WhatsApp product. Now it was a different product, and they perceived it as a different product, and they didn't feel like they were the customer for that anymore. So there were an awful lot of Democrat voters, people who might have had liberal leanings, who just stopped drinking that beer because they felt like they didn't want to have to explain to people why they were drinking the beer. And sales went through the floor. It affected the package store business in that shelf space had to be rearranged because a package store doesn't want to devote a large amount of shelf space to a product nobody's buying. So they had to move things in to kind of backfill that space. Modelo and Coors Light replaced Bud Light as the number one light beer product. And in fact, it's still number 3 behind those two, which is a significant loss in market share and a significant loss to the Anheuser-Busch Company. They're a public corporation. They have to explain to their shareholders how this happened. And they never really did come up with a good explanation. It just happened because An idea became reality before anybody could stop it. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I wonder, when we come back to what were they thinking? I mean, companies of this magnitude that have money for marketing and campaigns, et cetera, aren't there focus groups? Don't you take the WhatsApp people and put them in a focus group and say, hey, you're our main people who are buying, our main consumers. What do you think of this ad? What do you think of this approach? And you go from there and then see what you get back from people. So it looks like,
Yeah, we're back.
yeah. So focus groups or doing some market research before you actually launch into a campaign that is completely in a different path than what you've been doing.
Before you run a TV commercial, which is a very expensive proposition, network television, let's say, not just spot ads, but something where the investment is huge. Part of the investment is to run the ad in front of focus groups that are selected to determine that the advertisement will have the effect that you intend. That's television commercial advertising. Social media advertising is more organic, kind of fluid. And you really can't, they could have tested this. They certainly could have. What they could have done, Dr. Jacalyn, is talk about it before they did it. I don't know whether Alyssa had access to a team of people who could have reviewed her plan for this social media campaign and said, I think we need to understand this a little better and the impact it'll have. Because once it gets to Dylan Mulvaney can put it in front of whoever she wants and send it to whoever she wants and make as big a brouhaha out of it as she chooses. It's no longer owned and managed by Anheuser-Busch. It's now owned and managed by Dylan Mulvaney, who has her own agenda and is trying to accomplish her own. She's becoming an influencer. And, once you turn that over to them, then you lose control of the message. So before you craft the message, maybe somebody has to sit in a room with a lot of other people where everybody says, what if this happens? What if we go ahead with this campaign and Dylan goes ahead with her own campaign to get the word out on how she was chosen to represent a Was Up product, a typical beer product. And so I'd say the number one solution for the problem of brand suicide is to make sure that you shop an idea around before you actually execute on it, to try to gather the thoughts and sound advice of other people who know what they're doing around you before you just pull the trigger on something. That's kind of number one. But number two is, there are other companies that have made mistakes like this. Now, let's say that this is a case where maybe woke caused a problem for a company. The whole idea that liberals somehow might cause problems like this. But there are plenty of conservative examples too. I know you've heard of MyPillow and the CEO of MyPillow, who's now running, I think, for governor of Minnesota. Mike Lindell is a staunch supporter of Donald Trump, President Donald Trump. And he makes no bones about that. And where he starts to jam himself up is when he promotes the product and his own political agenda concurrently. Because the people who sleep on his pillows and use his sleepwear products are not necessarily supporters of Donald Trump. And, that's the second thing. Just because it feels right to you doesn't mean it's going to feel right to everybody. You really need to have a little bit of empathy and a little less. You have to dial your ego knob down and you have to dial your empathy knob up to understand what you're about to say could have ripple effects that could destroy your life's work unintentionally and for no reason. If you follow me, and he's suffering major declines in his business, probably on account of he's a conservative rather, in a world that has liberal voters, and liberals sleep 6 to 8 hours a night too. And you don't want to mix those two things up. That's why I know you're really careful about, you have political opinions, you vote, you have an idea where the country should head, but that belongs somewhere else other than here. You don't bring that up. Your guests might, you let them, but then you put a disclaimer up. It's not who we are, it's who he or she is.
Well, just a few comments to what you said. First of all, I never share my political views. And what I've trained our team is that when you're interviewing someone and they may have a very different opinion, it might not even be the topic of the show. And all of a sudden they say something and you feel completely the opposite way. It doesn't matter. You're not here to have point counterpoint. You're here to interview someone and give them a nice experience. So it doesn't belong. And then the other thing I want to say about what we've been seeing here, the product itself, the beer itself, most likely did not change. It's the same product. And even though you have people who have been drinking it, who love it, who it's part of their what's up experience, now all of a sudden it doesn't matter because it's the perception that they're now aligned with a different branding image. And so that brings me to my final thought on this, which it reminds me of Hollywood. It reminds me of these A-list actors who are winning awards, and then they use the award platforms to give their political views. And I personally have stopped watching those programs because it's no longer about the work. It's about someone getting paid millions of dollars to produce, to star, direct, whatever in some kind of product. And then when they go to accept the award, they start launching into their entire political views, which I personally don't want to hear. Either you are an A-list celebrity and you're going to continue doing your work, which, by the way, a lot of them do give back, but it's not the time and place, in my opinion, to be voicing your political views. Because if we were all doing that, if you and I just started voicing our political views, we would be taking away the whole content and purpose of this show.
Well, you in what you just said, you triggered a thought in my head about a maybe more recent example of what were they thinking. As we all know, Disney recently re-released the story of Snow White as a live action motion picture. And, I didn't watch it, and I'm certainly not the demographic for that. So it's not something I have direct experience with, but I do read box office numbers, and it tanked badly. It lost a lot of money because they tinkered with the whole idea of dwarfs, and they tinkered with the whole idea of girls. And, because they felt like the modern world would support that. And it turns out that the modern world doesn't support that or didn't support that. And people voted with their feet. They didn't go back to see the movie a second time. They heard from other people that they shouldn't go, and so they never went the first time. And that film ended up losing a ton of money because, like you just said, I want to be entertained when I go to a movie. I don't want to be lectured to. And sometimes it's hard for me to see a performer that has a political opinion and separate that political opinion in my memory from what I'm hearing that performer do here and now. It's hard for me to do that. And that means that I might actually make a decision not to watch a film on streaming video or not to go to a movie because I feel uncomfortable patronizing people with certain broadly expressed political views that make me uncomfortable. That's really a great point. I think the takeaways from a program like this are that you don't have to make these mistakes if you have a little bit of empathy for the difference between what you're trying to sell and who you are. Stop confusing yourself with the product. I think if you can draw that distinction and pull away from all that, I think you'll be more successful commercially than if you keep wrapping your head around everything you do.
I completely agree with that. And, I just want to bring in another example because I think this is kind of important. I recently was in a meeting and we were talking about things that go on around the world. And I happened to mention that there was a certain area where there were mines and there was a catastrophe there and a number of people had passed away. And I said, just as a human being, let alone, a peace ambassador, that I really was moved by it. And the reply that I got was, well, what do you think the CEO of the company that owns the mine thinks? And I said, well, I don't really know what that means. And it's basically like, it's about the money. It's about capitalism. It doesn't matter how we look about we're going to take care of these people or their families or whatever the case may be. And that was kind of an eye opener to me. And I thought to myself, you know what? I personally don't want to be aligned with that company, because if that's the way you're going to market, where it's just about the bottom line, it's just about the dollar. And then on the other side, when people are so much about it's about helping everyone, it's about helping everyone. Well, you can't help everyone. I mean, we have to help ourselves first. And it's almost like I remember from therapy, even many years ago when I was married in the dark ages. You have to take care of yourself first before you can be something to someone else. And so separating your own identity as an executive and looking at what is the branding and who is your audience and how can you bring value to them, as opposed to how can you put a feather in your own cap as an executive. I think that's an important distinction.
I completely agree with that, and people have antenna for that. I mean, you can do that in subtle ways without even bragging. People don't like people who brag generally. I mean, really. So that whole idea that somehow look at me, as soon as you kind of drift into that world where you're trying to get people to look at you rather than what you create or what you bring to them, they begin to resent you, and you undermine your own appeal to them. You undermine whatever it is you're trying to promise them you can do for them by throwing yourself into it in a kind of a, it's just not right. And I mean, we often use the word generosity to refer to people that we care about, that people who matter. If we see a performer that entertains us, or when we see a celebrity that we feel is a kind of a role model, we always use the word generous. It's a generous person. This is a person who shares what they have, who gives what they have to other people. And that word generosity goes a long way to building goodwill and generating audience for that face, whoever they might be. In their real actual life, they may not be generous at all. Who knows? But at least their image needs to convey that, because that's one of the ways you don't put people off. And putting people off is really what we've just been talking about. Why throw away half your audience because of an opinion you hold that other people may not share, unless you're running for office? I mean, if you're the product, then it's a different story. But if your product is pillows or movies or soft drinks or hard drinks, you've got to really be careful about how much of you leaks into that, because that's how you lose sales. And that, I think, keeping people focused on the ball, which is what they do to make the world a better place, and less on themselves, I think is like the first step in not making mistakes like this. Not making it so much about you and not so much about the people out there. And that not losing audience is a big deal.
Absolutely. Yeah, I really have enjoyed our conversation today. And I want to thank you for putting together those clips, because I think that really helps bring it to light. Al, tell us about the work that you're doing at ProFit for Teams.
Well, ProFit for Teams is an organizational development program, a team development program that uses the hopes and dreams of the people on the team as a kind of a focus point for pulling everybody on the team together. We start with a process we call a discovery audit, where we ask everybody on a team to visualize who they are as a team when they're doing their best work on their best day. We then profile that with a survey instrument that we've created. We take that data and feed it back to them. And through that process, they learn the role model that represents themselves collectively when they're doing their best work on their best day. We all know from all psychological research that people learn by observing the behavior of others. That's why role models are so important in anybody's life. We extend that concept to create a role model that represents a team. And then that role model becomes a kind of a rallying point for the team as a whole. We can get really great results organizing a team around the role model that represents them when they're doing their best work on their best day on a highly accelerated basis when we have that data. That data makes it possible for us to do in a few hours what other team building programs may never accomplish, or might take weeks or even months to accomplish. And that's ProFit for Teams. So it's for the people who are listening and not watching, PRO-FIT, the number 4, teams.com, and you can go there and learn more. Or you can call me. There's my number, 212-480-3730. Always happy to talk about this. It's a fun topic for me.
Thank you very much, my dear friend and mentor. I really appreciate it. We will see you again back here for next week's show, which is The Business Show. And I just want to share with our audience, if you have a story ahead for business, or if you'd like to come on The Business Show, you can reach out and contact us. The contact information details are in the show notes. Anything you want to leave us with, Al, before we close out?
Just that one thing. I hope you heard that, because we'd love to talk to you.
Yeah, absolutely. We're here for you. We love to share your story. So thank you again. We appreciate you being here, and we'll come back with our next episode after this. Until then, if you know someone who has dementia or Alzheimer's, or you're taking care of someone who is in this situation, I have the book for you. It's called Dementia Home Care Before, During, and After, and it was written by one of our team members, Tracy Cram-Perkins. Let's take a look. USA Global TV and Radio proudly presents Tracy Cram-Perkins, a dementia caregiving survivor teaching how to balance care with peace of mind. #1 resource for dementia caregivers. It's the book Dementia Home Care, How to Prepare Before, During, and After. Over 17,000 copies sold of this must-have guide. And now a testimonial from Tracy Smith.
If I was to describe this book to someone who is going through a similar situation, I would underscore how important it is to have some sort of a tool or a guidebook to help you through certain stages. And there's so many, it's such an unknown topic to the average person. And to have this as a reference is essential. It's going to help you get through it personally, as well as help your loved one manage.
To learn more, go to TracyCramPerkins.com. Tracy Cram-Perkins is an award-winning author. She's also the host of Dementia Home Care television show. Watch it here on USA Global TV and Radio.
Thank you, viewers and listeners of USA Global TV and Radio, for joining us today. We're honoured to have your time and attention as part of our global community. At USA Global TV and Radio, we believe in the power of authentic conversations, meaningful connections, and creating a world of possibilities together. Want to be part of something bigger? Join our team of elevated listeners at usaglobaltv.com, a space where your voice matters and your ability to listen transforms relationships. Stay connected with us across all our platforms for thought-provoking discussions, expert insights, and empowering stories. Subscribe to our channels at youtube.com/c/USA Global TV. Follow us on social media and explore the endless opportunities we're creating for growth, learning, and inspiration. Together, we're not just broadcasting, we're building bridges and changing lives one conversation at a time. For inquiries, contact us at info@usaglobaltv.com. Produced by Executive Producer and Director Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck. Voiceover by Mike Porter. Creative direction by Paul Garcia. All rights reserved. Visit usaglobaltv.com to view our full terms and conditions.